So artistic styles aren't typically things I want to look at in a series. I understand that, yeah, I am reviewing animation, and the animation style is an important part of every cartoon. My issue with reviewing the artistic side of everything, though, is the fact that explaining why animation does or does not work isn't exactly the easiest thing in the world, and at the end of the day, it'll totally be subjective no matter how much you explain your reasoning. And yes, I'm aware of the contradicting nature of me worrying about subjectivity on a review series built on subjectivity, but at least with aspects to story writing and character development, I can at least make a case for why I do or don't like an aspect. And I can try to do so with art, but at the end of the day it's, I like how this looks, or I don't. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and no two people will exactly agree upon looking at the same fruit bowl. Oh, but what if the animation style fits the tone of the show? I hypothetically hear you ask. Well, here's the thing. Odds are, no matter how subjectively ugly a show is, more often than not, the art style works with what the show is trying to go for. Looking at some infamous examples, Mr. Pickles, while looks hideous, works with the show's reliance of gross out and offensive humor. The animation style plays off the tone of what the show as a whole is working towards. 12-Ounce Mouse, while I don't much care for its animation myself, plays off the surreal nature of the show's writing. Hell, I can even make a case for problem solvers, because even taking away the fact that show's bright colors could give a kid a seizure, the typical art style it goes for is playing off the wild writing in science fiction settings. So no matter how you look at it, no matter how ugly a show is, there's probably a reason the show looks the way it does. The question is no longer, do I like how this looks? It becomes, does it fit with the show? And way more often than not, the answer is yes. Now, there are instances of shows playing with their animation. They'll take other styles of animation and toss it into the show to throw off their audience. By nature, this is taking the animation out of the tone of the show as a whole, but that doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing, as depending on how you play with it, it can work for certain scenarios. Which brings me to today's topic, my life as a teenaged robot. The show's animation is normally a rough, mechanical feel to it, even in the humans, but I guess that makes sense given that this is a show whose main character is a robotic superhero who constantly needs to save the world. Today's episode is going to take that and toss it out the window as it tries giving us the answer of, do robots dream of electric sheep? This is Daydream Believer. The episode starts with our main character, Jenny XJ9, waking up for the morning, or rather rebooting as she is a robot. The first thing she hears is Tuck, another recurring character, panicking about a monster. Jenny goes to save the day as Tuck explains that it was all just a dream. Given that Jenny is a robot, she doesn't understand what dreams are, so she asks her mother to allow her to dream, which she promptly does, dropping us into the rest of the episode. And as far as the writing goes, there are other aspects as Jenny's dreams wind up taking control of her mind and she winds up going on a sleep rampage until water shorts are out, but that's easily not the main focus of this episode. The episode is easily an excuse for the animators to play around with various animation styles, so what I'm going to do is review mostly the dream sequences in this episode and explain the context to each of them and explain why they either do or don't work in context. I will touch a tad on the episode itself, but there's barely anything to talk about there. The first dream is your typical nonsense. Ginny is taking part at a palace ball, meets the prince of her dreams, talks backwards, and dances up into the sky. You know, dream things. Given that this is Ginny trying out the dream chip for the first time, there's really no context needed here, as it'd work really no matter what you do. That said, the art style didn't really change this dream sequence, as while there are very certainly interesting designs of monsters in this fantasy realm, the characters' models of Ginny and this other human are very typical for the show. That said, the background is much more of an intriguing set piece. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it is a lot smoother than the norm of the straight lines and roughness. Ginny gets excited about the dream, but falls asleep in mythology class. The dream that begins is a fight with a kraken, using the kind of art style you would find on the side of a Roman vase, where Ginny defeats the kraken with some donuts. Despite how short this one is, I actually really like how this one is animated. Despite being very still, the minimal movements work in the clip's favor to match the theme. Afterwards, Ginny condescends Brad with the fact that she can now dream at will, which, while I get, is part of the conflict. They could have played a lot better than they did, given it just picks up Ginny and plops her into the antagonist seat with minimal build-up and zero warning. Not to mention, despite this episode being about dreams which tend to not be logical, even in their own realm, this still has a story outside of the dream sequences that needs to make sense in its own realm. This conflict doesn't. Brad says that Ginny loses touch when she dreams, and she insists that it's superior dreaming. Like, why? Anyway, following this is probably the worst dream sequence, which sucks considering this idea is great. A 1920s bouncy walk down the sidewalk. But not only is the style not all that similar to the style they were trying to go for, but it's so bare bones with its execution that I don't really care. Hell, they set up the out-of-dream sequence with Ginny wanting to hug a truck thinking it was an elephant, but we don't see the elephant, she does. We just see the truck, which is absolutely wasted potential here. I understand the episodes are 11-minute segments at tops, so expecting everything to just work may be asking for a bit too much, but leading up to this point and everything after, they put emphasis on the important aspects of the dreams. We get to see it from both the dream sequence and how it affects Ginny in the real world. The emphasis on the elephant is important, as Ginny being in that spot at that time caused her to be in the position that we see her in for the rest of the episode. The truck hits a telephone pole and zaps Ginny, and then we get the final dream art style for the rest of the episode, the Dr. Seuss dream style. And this is where the big climax occurs, as Ginny sees pretty much everything as evil. Sausages, trucks, cars, you name it. And from here, the episode kind of just goes on autopilot until the final scene. We do get some funny jokes here and there, such as the one where Tut tells Brad what's occurring and Brad guesses everything in a self-aware state. And we do learn that they can show Ginny she's dreaming by pouring garbage on themselves, but overall, the episode from this point on focuses on its action more than anything else. Which is why I kind of hinted earlier that this episode is an episode that's fairly weak and is primarily there to show off the various art styles and animation. Because that really is all that this episode shows to be, just one big animation test. Truthfully, I don't see that as a huge issue, all but like one of the dreams succeeded in the goal of keeping me invested with interesting ideas. I do overall like the episode despite the pretty glaring flaws. It's just an episode to be desired. If you like cool concept and interesting animation, the episode is certainly for you, if you don't pay too much attention to writing. But if you do pay attention to writing, it's probably best to avoid this one at any cost. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.